Welcome to the Answer is Yes podcast, where we interview some of the most interesting people that have said yes to opportunities in their life. We hope that through these stories, you can learn to create your own destiny by saying yes along the way. Join us as we explore the new series covering topics such as passion, integrity, and hard work. I'm your host, Jim Riley, and I hope you enjoy these interviews as much as I do. I believe that everyone has an important message worth hearing. Hello and welcome to the Answer is Yes podcast. Thanks for tuning in and all your feedback. I really appreciate hearing from everybody. As we transition into a new year, if you've got guests or potential topics you want me to cover, hit me up on my social media and or my email or my website, Live Life Driven. I have connected with Ivan from the RAS Project. Love your podcast, Ivan. How's it going?
It's doing good, man. Hey, thanks for having me on.
As much as I love the few shows I've listened to, there's a ton on there that I want to listen to, a variety of different topics that pertain. We caught up just for a couple of minutes before I hit the record button and introduced you. We got a lot to talk about, I think.
Absolutely, man. I'm a sucker for conversations. I'm an even bigger sucker for psychology and mindset. So I have a feeling this could go on forever.
Yeah, well, I want to start in reverse on this show. Usually I'll ask for your background and go from there. But I think because we had some momentum, we've got 2021 around the corner and everybody, you start seeing the resolutions popping up as you suggested. Everybody's looking forward to that change. But in reality, what's really changing besides the dates, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And interestingly enough, you brought that up because I think, 2020 has been a very interesting, very challenging year in many different facets. It's been challenging from a human culture standpoint. It's been challenging from an entrepreneurship standpoint. It's been challenging, from a relationship standpoint. And this is, me speaking from experience in the things that I saw pan out in 2020. But let's face it, there's always something happening in the world. There's chaos, there's violence, God forbid, World War III, right? Mm-hmm. But I think it's in our human nature to thrive. But the challenge is that you can thrive only if you want to. And I think that's what a lot of people have been caught up in is, they've been caught up in the controversy. They've been caught up in the chaos. They've been caught up in materialistic things. And this is why they have such a skewed perception of 2021.
Now, I've talked about this a little bit. 2020 has been one of my best years from a business standpoint, working for myself, launching it. Well, I've launched a couple businesses this year. You mentioned before I started recording that 2020 was also one of your best years. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think people that have been stuck in this hole, because of everything going on around them, have forgotten to look inside and what talents they possess to be successful in a terrible year like this. And I think you could probably add some light on how people can look at 2021 for their own point of view and be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, here's some of the things that I did. So, let's go back to January 2020. First month of a new year, a lot of unforeseen things, a lot of questions. And, fast forward a couple months, you would have knew that COVID-19 would have hit. And I think when COVID-19 hit, the first 3 months were good. I was hanging on to and signing on some new business actually in those first 3 months. Mm-hmm. And really the way I approached it was relationship driven, using social media, connecting with people, text messages, calling up contacts through my CRM, just really, pounding the phones, pounding messages. And then when COVID really hit, I think it just created a lot of panic for people. A lot of people created a lot of uncertainty because let's face it, when you live in the United States where 70% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, it creates uncertainty because it questions their livelihood. It questions their income. And so, when I looked at that, I started to really rethink my approach. Okay. First of all, I did not panic. That was the first thing. I remained a sense of control because the only way you're going to progress is remaining in control and having clarity. Do not panic because when you panic, you lose control. Mm-hmm. And when you lose control, you have no direction. And so when the pandemic, and actually, I think it was middle of March, I drove out to Chicago, since I'm in St. Louis, to see a client. And this was like, I think a week or two before, like things really kind of started shutting down and a lot of limitations were putting forth. And, after that, I knew that somehow my intuition is something that I've also learned in 2020 to be more reliant on. And before I go further into that, I just want to give a brief background on, who I am and how all this really comes together.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
So I was born in Bulgaria. My father immigrated to the United States close to 30 years ago, had $400 in his pocket, and nowadays is an entrepreneur running a multi-million-dollar business. But I won't spend time talking about that. I think it's important to understand that, being an immigrant, really started from nothing. I was 14 years old, 1994, landed in St. Louis, Missouri, and then was like, now what? Didn't know any English, obviously cultural barrier, social barrier. So, was very lost. Now, kind of fast forward, I think at a very young age and prior to even coming to the States, I was the kid who was on the playground. I was trying to make deals and build relationships and selling stuff and all kinds of different things. And it wasn't until I think we came to the States that I realized that this was a whole new chapter of my life, and at a very early age, I remember when I was 14 years old, one of my father's first business ventures was owning a small pizza joint, a local pizza joint. I remember him working 10, 12, 14-hour days, endlessly, 7 days a week. I mean, he would even be burnt out and still keep going. And I think that was one indication for me about resilience. I sort of depicted that and knew that, like this will be something that I need to master in life, how to be resilient. And so at a very, very early age, I took interest to technology and marketing. This was, 1994, like dial-up internet and AOL chat and GeoCities. And, my father had one of these old computers at his pizza joint with these giant CRT monitors, if anybody remembers those.
Oh, yeah.
And Windows 3.11 at the time that he had. It wasn't even Windows 95 until like a year later. And they didn't know, my parents being immigrants, like they didn't know how to operate technology. So, they defaulted to me. So I had to learn how to operate the computer and all this stuff. And I took interest to it. Kind of fast forward, that drew me into, marketing and digital and really just being self-taught in a lot of different, areas of, when Google started and paid advertising and SEO and social media. And I remember in high school, I was supposed to do my homework, me and an old buddy of mine, actually, that we've stayed in touch for, 15 years now on Facebook, that lives about 3 or 4 hours away. We'd like get off the bus at his house, pop in the AOL online CD and get on AOL chat and just, be playing around, and that was really the evolution of like when I knew that technology and marketing was somehow going to be something that I'm so heavily interested in, but I just couldn't figure out what to do with it. Fast forward, got into the agency world, spent 13 years in the agency world, also taught at the university level, digital, social, marketing. And mind you, I barely graduated high school and dropped out of college. And it was fascinating to even actually see that I was able to teach the skills that I learned in the School of Hard Knocks to people who had like MBAs.
Yeah, sure.
And mind you, this was like 2006, 2005, 2004, and I think at the time I sort of felt as an anomaly, like here's me. I don't have any formal education really besides, barely graduating high school. And I'm teaching people skills that I have learned on my own. Kind of fast forward, that led me up to, starting my company, Razor Sharp Digital, which we focus on helping brands and companies and entrepreneurs establish their full digital footprint using human-to-human marketing, community development, and multi-channel advertising. And this actually started coming up on 5 years now when I started that. And that was mainly because, after working in the agency world and doing a lot of stuff, I realized, what? Like, I need to do this on my own. It's time. It's time. 5 years ago, one of the things that I had done is with my father's business, helped him double his revenue in one single year by really just being involved full time, operations, processes, things like that. And so that brings us, to modern day, having done a whole bunch of stuff over a span of 26 years in the digital space. And I feel like every day I'm having to spend time on how to maintain a sense of relevance because the digital space is just so fast paced. And we were talking about Clubhouse, for example, just a little bit ago. But, for me, it has always been building relationships with people. It has always been in my DNA. This is what, seeing my father build his business also, mind you, no marketing, all 100% referral, word of mouth. I realized that, it has always been in my DNA to help people. And I've become really good at, technology, understanding technology, creating targeted solutions, attracting, $150 million companies, as clients, and that's because, over the last 5 years, and we're talking about this 2020 earlier on, is like, I really have dialed in on who I am. Like, what is it that I bring to the table? What are my skills? What am I really good at? What am I really good at that others aren't? And, that brings us to the discussion about 2020 is that, sure, a lot of things happen in 2020, and I took inventory of okay, should I be paranoid? Should I plan differently? What should I do? And then I came to the realization that, well, keep doing what you've been doing thus far.
Yeah, sure.
Just double down on building relationships, talking to people like you, just offering solutions to problems. I mean, one quote that I keep going back to this year, it's probably going to be one that's going to stick in my mind, is Tony Robbins. Business is 90% psychology and 10% execution. And, I'm a huge sucker for psychology. In fact, in my own podcast, we talk a lot about that, which the RAS Project actually started 6 years ago. And actually, it kind of started as a way to build authority and build a voice also. And little did I know that, I'll be able to attract, some of the most successful people on the planet. But the psychology aspect was really the biggest part, because psychology, just having a different way of thinking, can help you establish the likability and trust. And as we know, likability and trust are the two things that you need to have in order to do business with people. Sure. And I'll give you a prime example. I mean, last year was a prime example of that. So last year I was sort of on this LinkedIn prowl. I would just be pushing videos, one video every single day on LinkedIn. And mind you, I did that for 4 months, every single day, right? And it was like crickets. Almost nobody liked the video, nobody commented on it. And most people would say, you're wasting your time. In fact, a lot of people said that. Ivan, you're wasting your time, creating these social videos, right? Well, after 4 months, I get a direct message on LinkedIn. And it's from a lady by the name of Kristen. She's like, I haven't watched your videos, man. Looked you up. You're legit. I know you know your shit. But I love your psychology. I love how real and raw you are, how direct and transparent you are. Let me bring you to meet one of the 5 partners, and this was a healthcare startup here in St. Louis. They were doing about $25 million in revenue, but they needed someone to help them launch a podcast, build a holistic digital strategy. They were technically a startup, mind you. Last year, there were a 95-person company.
Pretty good startup.
What's that?
Pretty good startup.
Exactly, pretty good startup, but the reason I'm sharing this story is that the consistency factor was able to build that trust and create that attraction and appeal that earned me that face-to-face meeting. Now, mind you, this was before COVID, too, so I was actually able to sit it in a room on a table. But, looking at 2020, it's no different than 2019 or 2018. It's just amplifying the things that you've been doing. That's really the best advice that I give to anyone. It's look, you might be really good at what you do, but if you're not, creating attraction, if you're not creating appeal, if you're not meeting the right people, I think you mentioned that before we hit record.